Since day one of 2 weeks to flatten the curve, liberals have been COVID fear porn nymphomaniacs. They love everything about COVID hysteria, especially Hollywood liberals, from preaching safer at home from the comfort of their mansions, remote learning for your peasant kids as theirs had private tutors, and of course, their beloved masks and their even more beloved vaccines. It's an unhealthy obsession that for some has lasted longer than even COVID itself. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Jimmy Fallon performing the variant song.
There was Alpha, then Delta, then Omicron next. But this latest variant might be the best. It's XBB.1.5. Another brand of COVID-19 has arrived. It's a new strain, but it isn't the same. Sounds more like Elon Musk's kid's name. It's XBB.1.5.
So there's cringeworthy, and then there's that, which is even worse. But speaking of cringe, this list of losers wouldn't live up to its name if it didn't feature the patriarch, the grandfather, the elder loser himself, Joe Biden.
And here we have folks from the Salvation Army who also have been murdered. So we're only
So I'm not really sure what happened there. I'm not sure if Joe was confused as to who he was meeting, mistaking the man for a Secret Service agent, or if he just wanted to let the guy from the Salvation Army know he's met the Secret Service, who is tasked with following him literally everywhere. I'm just really not sure, but it sure is something. But not only is Joe awfully confused, he's also one big sleepy hypocrite.
Because there can no longer be any question, none. In today's interconnected world, we cannot wall ourselves off from shared problems. We are stronger and better when we work together.
We cannot wall ourselves off to protect our border or our national security, but we sure as hell can fork over $500,000 to build a wall around Joe's Delaware beach house. Isn't that just dandy, folks? But speaking of brain damage, a lot of Democrats beyond Joe suffer from it, but this week the former bartender taught us gas stoves are to blame. No, really. Now look, as much as I would like to dog on AOC for this, I really can't, because if there is one person who knows a thing or two about brain damage, it is most certainly Miss Ocasio-Cortez. If a gas stove is what did that to her, shoot, I'll go electric or unicorn dust or whatever these green hairs prefer now to save my brain from whatever damages hers. You betcha I will. Those are my losers of the week. God bless them. But still ahead, is it time to not only defund those 87,000 IRS agents, but also abolish the IRS itself? Carol Roth joins me with her thoughts next. Abolish the IRS. If you're a conservative, that sounds like a dream. If you're a Democrat, it's likely your worst nightmare. But up until this new freedom-loving House Republican majority, however slim it may be, that notion seemed like just a sweet, sweet fantasy. But lo and behold, it's real. It's called the Fair Tax Act, and it would, in theory, reel in the IRS and remove the national income tax and other taxes and replace them with a single consumption tax. Of course, Biden and Democrats are adamantly opposed, billing it as a tax hike for the middle class, which is very gaslighty considering their blatant affinity for tax hikes on the middle class. But joining me now with her take is economic expert Carol Roth. Carol, it's great to have you. I follow you on Twitter, and I love all of your advice and your guidance, especially when it comes to the economy. And boy, have you been busy for the last couple of years.
It's true. I hate to be the constant bearer of bad news because I'm usually a fairly jolly person, Tomi. But the Biden administration and Congress has made it very, very difficult on me to have anything positive to say about anything economic that affects everybody's personal wealth.
I want to start off with that Fair Tax Act, abolish the IRS. Now, this has been floated several times. It's never come to fruition. You know, it sounds like a very radical agenda item to have for Republicans. But in theory, would this actually be better for the majority of Americans? Are you in favor of something like this?
So, I mean, I like the spirit of it, but the idea that you're going to then create a consumption tax, which is going to put the burden on millions, tens of millions of small businesses to now try to have to account for that accounting of additional taxes doesn't really make a lot of sense. Here's my proposal. Just send us a bill. You know what we make, you know what you're spending. Send us a bill, send us an itemized bill like every other time time we consume any sort of products and services, then we can actually look and go, okay, I'm paying this much for the military. I'm paying this much for, studies about shrimp walking on treadmill. And maybe people would start to pay attention and go, this doesn't seem so necessary. So I take issue with the amount of spending. I take issue with the fact that I have to guess on how much I pay the IRS and then get penalized if I guess wrong. But I don't think that the consumption tax is really the right way to go.
Yeah, a lot of conservatives, Senator Ted Cruz being one of them, has often really advocated for just a flat tax on everybody, which is, similar to a consumption tax. But it feels like it's a lot more fair, or at least it feels like it doesn't punish people for excelling and doing well and stimulating the economy. But am I getting that wrong? Would the notion of just like a flat tax on everybody, would that maybe be more beneficial and the economics of that be more helpful and spread out the wealth, as the Democrats love to do, in a better and more efficient way?
I think the bigger issue comes down to the spending. They can choose to bill us any way that they want and extract those fees in any way they want. But if they don't stop the spending, then it's sort of irrelevant. Additionally, they don't have the taxes that they collect to pay for that spending. So that means they have to issue debt. If there are not enough buyers of the debt, we're buying our own debt. They are devaluing the dollar. They're creating inflation. They're putting away the purchasing power of the dollar, on an individual level. So I take much more issue at this point with the spending than the mechanism. I do think the mechanism is insane and needs to be rejiggered. And I agree, something like a flat tax, I think, would make a lot more sense than a consumption tax or the litany of hoops that we have to jump through here. But if we don't get some reining in of the spending, then, we're kind of focusing on the sideshow instead of the center stage at the circus.
Absolutely. So, Carol, you tweeted about something the other day that I am not super familiar with, but I think it's concerning. And from what you said, I should be concerned about it. Americans should be concerned about it. It's called ESG. I don't really know what it is. Can you please explain for those of us that are unaware?
Yeah, so this is environmental, social, and corporate governance. If the way that everybody should think about it is sort of business social credit, a bunch of elite getting together and finding out a way that they can dictate to businesses what they should do based on the whims of the elite. Now, Tomi, I cannot tell you exactly what the criteria for ESG is, because as you can imagine, it changes based on the whims of what elite wants. And the challenge is that this has seeped in to the financial sector and the allocators of capital. It started with the biggest aggregate fund with assets under management, BlackRock, which at one point had up to about 10 trillion in assets under management, and it is now infiltrated into publicly traded companies and the biggest companies in the United States. And this has been a huge issue for why things like fossil fuels have not been funded, because funding has been directed away because they are quote unquote not ESG friendly. So instead of companies now doing what is in the best interest of their shareholders, they're saying, oh, we have to consider all stakeholders, which is a joke. Some random person off the street that doesn't interact with your company is not a stakeholder. So this is a big issue. The Biden administration's Department of Labor put in one of their economic departments put in a rule now that lets pension fund managers basically, instead of saying we have to invest on the best interests of the people we are investing on behalf as a fiduciary, you can now invest based on these loose ESG criteria. So if you want to say, oh, well, we're doing it for the good of the planet, it doesn't have to be for the good of you as an investor. So this not only impacts your personal wealth, but really can reshape the company or the country and freedom, and is something that everybody needs to pay more attention to.
Well, it sounds like, very simply put, woke capitalism. And it sounds like when these big companies, of course, they have their pride flags on everything the entire month of June, or they put black squares up for BLM, or, of course, the ongoing religion of climate change. All of that, not what we need right now, especially given our current economic state. That's what I want to ask you about next. You said it's not looking great, it's looking more grim than ever. Are we going to plunge into a recession, even though we were technically there months back? Are we going to head into a depression? What is going to happen based on your forecast in the next 6 months to a year with this economy?
Yes, well, we certainly could see that double dip recession. We were in one, we came out of it technically, we could go back into it. But what I'm more concerned about is a personal recession. Consumer spending makes up about 70% of the economy. So the consumer is going to determine in large part whether or not we go into a recession. The challenge from a consumer standpoint, as I'm looking at, is consumers are continuing to spend to try to keep up with all of this inflation. So as inflation's been eating away at their dollars, instead of trying to pull back some or make some swaps, they are keeping pace with that. And they're doing that by eating into their savings. They're doing that by taking on more debt. And so that is affecting their personal wealth. So I am really concerned about this concept of a personal recession, that because people still have jobs and they may feel wealthier if they own a home because their home value has increased over the past several years, that they may continue to eat away at their personal balance sheets to try to keep pace with the spending. And I don't want to see that happen. I don't want people to be personally impacted. You have to preserve your long-term wealth. And so I think that is a bigger risk that I'm concerned about than in the overall economy going into a recession.
What that also sounds like is people spending beyond their means because they have no idea what a budget is or no idea how to live within their means, because the Democrats certainly do not, as it relates to our government. But that's the last thing I want to ask you about, because there has been this trend, especially among young people. It's called quiet quitting. And right now, quiet quitting is okay, and it works for young people because employers need bodies. They need warm bodies. I mean, if you barely have a pulse, you can have a job right now. And in fact, not only can you have a job, they'll probably pay you way more than you're worth just to keep your warm body in whatever location you need to be in to keep that business barely afloat. But I wonder, Carol, what is going to happen when things turn around a little bit and people are not so comfortable? They're not able to demand 3 months of vacation. They're unable to demand these high salaries and the work from home in my pajamas and everything else that they're able to demand now. What is going to happen when this quiet quitting really comes home to roost?
I love the name quiet quitting, Tomi, because they've just rebranded mediocrity. Mediocrity has been around since the beginning of time. Now it has a cute name for it, right? Here's the bigger issue that we have. We have this massive supply and demand imbalance in the labor market. We have about 1.7 jobs open for every job seeker. And given the number of retirees, given some immigration policy, given the generous benefits that on some of these states and have been giving away, the reality is I don't know, even if employers get a little bit more leverage, how much more leverage they're going to get. Certainly they may require people to come back to the office, but in terms of getting these stellar employees and all of a sudden turning the tenor of mediocrity around, I don't know that that's going to happen. I think this is going to be a long-term drag on the workforce. And the craziest thing is that if you know somebody who's looking for a job, like, your competitive advantage right now is just giving a damn. That becomes a competitive advantage because there are so few people who actually care about what they're doing today. It's really unfortunate. It's going to be a long-term drag on the economy.
It's unfortunate. And I actually read something the other day that said, it doesn't matter what the unemployment rate is. I mean, we always look at that metric as kind of a barometer of the economy, but this person said that really doesn't matter. What you need to look at is the fact that there are able-bodied men and women that are in their prime that are choosing not to work. That is the metric we need to look at, and that is what is really problematic for me when I look at it. There are people out there that are like, you know what, this whole working thing, it's not for me. And I don't know what's going to change that, but I'm really fearful that when people are out there at some point scrounging for jobs, then it's going to be a whole different story, and it's going to be horrible for our economy. You can't just teach someone how to give a damn, as you said, overnight. It's something that is built up. It is something that you're conditioned to be, and we're not conditioning young people to be that at all right now. So in conclusion, what would your message be to those young people out there that are weighing the benefits and the risks of being a quiet quitter, or quite frankly, not giving a damn because they can get away with it?
Yeah, amen to you. And if you're out there, I mean, you can really differentiate yourself. The reality is that your life is about purpose. It's about looking at what you do as your art and your contribution to the world. It's only work if you make it work. But if you're going to do something, do it well, be proud of it, have goals, put yourself in a great position. And like we talked about, if you give a damn, you're going to be like at the top of pretty much everybody who's going to be working out there. You're going to be a highly sought after individual.
If you give a damn, but if you are a white Christian conservative male, you're probably still screwed, no matter how hard you work. But we'll just leave it at that. Carol, thank you so much.
Entrepreneurship, capitalism.
Someday it's going to change. I just know it. The pendulum is going to swing. But thank you so much. I follow you on Twitter, and I really enjoy your commentary. And thank you for being with me today. I hope to have you back soon.
Thanks for having me.